The life of a Roman soldier was marked by long marches, exhausting battles and constant uncertainty. Through it all, food was a crucial part of their survival. Wheat was the heart of daily meals, turned into porridge, bread or a dense porridge, which soldiers ate while resting their tired bodies on the side of the road. The simplicity of the grains represented the life they led, hard, without luxury and always focused on the need to move forward. Eating was not a pleasure, but a necessity. The soldiers knew that, without food, they would not be able to march the kilometers that separated them from their next destinations. In times of scarcity, wheat was replaced by barley, a grain they despised. For many, barley was a humiliation. It wasn't just the harsher taste that was bothersome, but the fact that it was the food given to horses. Consuming barley was a clear sign that the situation was critical. Still, even in difficult times, they had no choice. The barley kept their bodies functioning even when their minds longed for something more worthy. The bread, often hard and tasteless, was eaten quickly during stops. Every soldier knew there was no time to waste. They chewed what they could, already thinking about the next gear. There was no excess, there was no abundance. But that piece of bread, as simple as it was, represented the line between life and total exhaustion. Rome's strength depended not only on their swords, but on the food they carried with them. If wheat was the basis of the Roman soldier's diet, meat was the food that offered the necessary strength for battles. It came from different sources, but was rarely guaranteed. When soldiers managed to capture wild boar, deer or rabbits during their hunts, the camp was transformed. The smell of meat roasting over the fire, amid the cold of the night's march, had the power to revive not only the tired body, but also the downcast spirit. Eating meat was almost like a prize amidst daily difficulties. On lucky nights, the camp took on a different atmosphere. Around the fires, the men ate slowly, taking advantage of every piece of pig or cattle confiscated from neighboring villages. The salty flavor of smoked or roasted meat brought a rare moment of satisfaction. For those who had spent the whole day eating dry bread or wheat porridge, the heat of the meat in their mouths reminded them that, despite everything, they were still alive. It was a strength that didn't just come from the muscles, but also from the renewed energy that each meal brought. However, as with everything in a soldier's life, meat was an uncertain luxury. Often, the silence of nights without hunting or confiscated animals made camping heavy. The soldiers retired with empty stomachs, knowing that, the next day, they would have to fight with what the wheat offered. Meat, when it came, brought strength and hope, but it also reminded them how fragile and unpredictable life on the battlefield was. If meat was the source of strength for battles and wheat guaranteed the basis of the daily diet, it was legumes and fruits that brought the simplicity and nutrition necessary to keep the body in balance. Although the lives of Roman soldiers were marked by long marches and harsh meals, legumes, such as beans, lentils and peas, played a vital role in their diet. They were easy to store and transport, and although they didn't have the rich flavor of meat or the weight of wheat, they provided the protein soldiers' bodies needed. During rest stops, lentils cooked in large cauldrons alongside wheat polenta were a familiar sight to the troops. The taste was simple, almost unseasoned, but the function was clear, to ensure that soldiers could march for more kilometers under the scorching sun or fight until their last breath in battles. There was nothing luxurious about these meals, but each spoonful brought the strength needed to continue. Peas and beans, likewise, appeared in pots, offering humble but essential variety to the soldier's diet. Fruits, on the other hand, appeared as a rarity. In times of abundance or when found during marches, they were collected by soldiers to complement their meals. Figs and raisins, especially, were carried like little treasures, a quick source of energy in a rare sweet taste amid the bitterness of military life. Although rarely part of official rations, fruit, when available, offered a moment of relief and refreshment to men who were otherwise content with the daily repetition of grains and legumes. The simplicity of these foods, far from being a gastronomic pleasure, was what kept the soldiers on their feet, ready to face the challenges of the next day. If legumes and fruits brought simplicity and nutrition to the daily lives of Roman soldiers, cheese was a rare source of pleasure and sustenance amid marches and battles. Unlike meat and wheat, which were basic and always expected, cheese appeared as an unexpected relief, light to carry, but powerful in supporting exhausted bodies. Made from goat, sheep or cow milk, it was easily preserved and, in many cases, produced by the soldiers themselves, who took advantage of any opportunity to create food during campaigns. For soldiers, cheese was more than a source of protein and calcium, it was a slice of normality in the midst of the brutality of the battles. When the cheese rations were distributed, the fresh, slightly salty taste seemed precious. It could be consumed alone or mixed with bread and legumes, making the meal a little more substantial. Each piece of cheese was savored calmly, as if time could be prolonged just by this taste so rare in military routines. The act of sharing cheese among soldiers, especially during long marches, created a moment of pause and connection. There, in the tents or beside the fires, the men shared food and, along with it, the few words they could exchange. That piece of cheese, simple and resistant, carried the weight of being one of the few moments in which the flavor was something beyond the need to survive. It was a small reminder that, even in times of struggle, there was room for satisfaction that went beyond simple sustenance. No matter how humble it was, cheese had the power to transform any meal into something that carried flavor and memories. Even without plenty, it was a rare moment of pleasure amid the harshness of a soldier's life. After eating bread, meat or legumes, Roman soldiers had a basic need that could not be ignored: thirst. And on their long journeys, wine and water were as essential as food to ensure the body continued to function. Each soldier carried a water skin or canteen with them, ensuring they could stay hydrated during the endless marches under the scorching sun. Water, although essential, was not always clean or safe to drink. That's where wine came in, especially Posca, a mixture of sour wine diluted with water. This drink, despised by the rich, was essential for soldiers. In addition to quenching thirst, Posca had the function of purifying water, eliminating bacteria, and making it safer for consumption. The sour taste of vinegar was not pleasant, but at the end of a long day of battle or march, each sip offered much-needed relief. The Posca became almost a natural energetic, revitalizing the soldiers and helping to maintain resistance. On cold nights in the camps, wine, when not diluted, served to warm exhausted bodies. Even far from the banquets and pleasures of the cities, the simple act of drinking wine between meals brought a small sense of comfort. For soldiers, wine represented a break, a chance to forget, even if for a brief moment, the harshness of military life. Sitting around the fire, sharing Posca or wine, they drank in silence, knowing that each sip helped prepare their bodies for the next challenge. Just like food, wine and water were more than just sustenance, they symbolized continuity. Every time a soldier raised his canteen, he knew he needed to move forward, always with one eye on the battle and the other on the long road ahead. If wine brought rare comfort and meat offered strength, salt and olive oil were the silent companions of survival. On each campaign, Roman soldiers carried not only their weapons and armor, but also the constant worry about food that would need to last for days or weeks. Salt, often ignored in common life, gained immense importance. It not only seasoned meals, but preserved the only source of protein soldiers could trust: salted meat. In moments of pause, when fires were lit and soldiers sat around, it was the salt that allowed the flavor of the meat to resist time. Each piece of preserved pork or beef brought momentary relief. The salty taste, even simple, became familiar. For many, it was like a taste of home, something that, even far away, brought a little comfort amid the harshness of the battlefield. Salt wasn't just a seasoning, it was what kept them going on days when everything around them seemed to be falling apart. Olive oil had a more subtle but equally important role. The gentle touch of olive oil on hard bread or mixed with legumes made the meals, always repetitive, gain a little more flavor. Even in the midst of hunger and extreme tiredness, the soldiers knew that that golden liquid was a valuable source of energy, something that gave more lightness to the heavy food they needed to eat to continue. The oil dripping over the improvised dishes, around the fires, brought with it a brief moment of softness in a routine marked by brutality. Sharing the salt and oil with your squad mates was a silent but meaningful gesture. They knew that it was not just the body that needed sustenance, but also the soul, which found relief in the little things. Salt preserved more than meat. I kept hope that, even on the hardest days, the next piece of food would take them a little further. Amid long marches and battles, Roman soldiers needed more than strength. They needed organization to ensure the food reached them. Each group of soldiers had to make do with what they found on the way or with the provisions they carried. Preparing meals was as important a task as fighting. Food was divided equally and cooked over simple fires, often along the wayside or in temporary camps. These moments of meal preparation were a break from the rush of war. Soldiers knew that food, even simple food, was what would keep the body functioning. Each man had a role within the group. While some went to get water or firewood, others tended the fire or cut pieces of meat and vegetables. The union between them strengthened in these moments, where each one knew that they depended on the other to guarantee their survival. The smell of roasting meat or cooking lentils brought a rare relief. Even in the midst of extreme tiredness, there was something calming about these moments. Around the pots and cauldrons, the soldiers exchanged few words, but the look of satisfaction upon seeing the food ready was enough. With food in hand, they knew that no matter how tough the battle the next day was, at least they would be ready to face it. If preparing food was an essential task, the act of eating became a small daily ritual. For Roman soldiers, meals were not just moments to satisfy hunger. They offered respite from the chaotic rhythm of marches and battles. Around the fires, the sound of the fire crackling and the smell of bread being heated in the heat brought a rare moment of calm. The tired bodies, which had previously moved without rest, finally had a moment to breathe. Meals were eaten simply, without ceremony. Each soldier took his portion and ate it in silence. Food, often repetitive, became a moment of survival. The hard bread, salted meat and lentils were chewed quickly, but with the awareness that each bite was what kept their bodies upright. Despite the simplicity of the food, there was something comforting about this ritual. It was the only time the soldiers could sit together, even without many words. Around the fire, the men's tired expressions made clear the weight they were carrying. But with the food in hand, however simple it was, there was a brief moment of relief. They knew that when the last piece of bread was eaten, the cycle of marching and fighting would begin again. But at that moment, what mattered was being there, sharing what little they had and preparing for the next day. If the ritual of meals brought a welcome break from the soldiers' routine, moments of food scarcity put everyone to the test. It was not uncommon that, during long campaigns, supplies began to run low. When wheat, meat or legumes ran out, soldiers had to find other ways to feed themselves. At these times, the survival instinct spoke louder. They hunted wild animals or ventured out to gather whatever the land could offer, such as roots and herbs. In those moments, taste no longer mattered. Hunger was a constant presence, and any food, no matter how simple or unexpected, became essential. Rabbits, deer and even small birds became easy prey for those who carried the sword and needed to remain standing. The meat, although cooked in a hurry, provided the energy needed for another day of walking or battle. Soldiers knew they could not count on the luxury of choice. Adapting was the only way out. Still, there was a feeling of togetherness in the lean days. Every piece of food, no matter how small, was divided among the men, reinforcing the idea that survival depended on the group. Nobody ate alone. Even in the worst conditions, sharing was the only certainty. They knew that as long as they could share what little was left, they could keep marching together, towards the next victory or challenge. For Roman soldiers, food was more than a means of keeping the body upright. Each meal, no matter how simple or scarce, represented the strength needed to continue marching, fighting and surviving. Wheat, meat, legumes and even the humble cheese were not just nutrients. They were daily reminders that as long as there was food, there was also the chance to withstand the challenges of the battlefield. The soldiers knew that war was not just about fighting, but also about resistance. And the food, no matter how repetitive or tasteless, kept this resistance alive. The bitter taste of dry bread or the heat of roasted meat brought a kind of comfort they couldn't find in anything else. Eating was not just a physical need. It was a gesture of preparation for the next day, the next march and, who knows, the return home. Around campfires or at quick stops during marches, the act of eating became a silent ritual of hope. Even without words, the soldiers knew that as long as they could share food, they could face any challenge. The food that sustained their bodies also fueled the fighting spirit that kept them grounded, ready to move forward. Are you enjoying the content? Leave a comment with a topic you'd like to see covered in the next videos. Your opinion is very important to us.